Good morning, everyone. I'm Adam Ostro. I'm editor-in-chief of Mashable, and I have the pleasure this morning to introduce our keynote speaker, David Jones. David's an extraordinarily accomplished individual who's the CEO of RSCG worldwide, and last month was named CEO of Havas. David is the youngest CEO of a major holding company. He has made a name for himself as a driving force for change, both within his own agency and in the broader advertising industry. David is also the co-founder of One Young World, a nonprofit organization that gives a voice to leaders aged 25 and younger from around the globe. In 2009, Kofi Annan selected David and his team to create and lead Tick Tick Time for Climate Change, an open source campaign that recruited more than 17 million climate allies to the cause. You may also know David because he worked closely with David Cameron and the UK Conservative Party from 2007 and up to including Cameron's election as Prime Minister in 2010. David was inducted into the American Advertising Federation's Hall of Achievement in 2005 and was named to the 40 Under 40 list of both Crain's New York Business and Advertising Age. He was voted one of the 2 top executives of the decade by readers of Adweek. Please join me in welcoming David Jones.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I was actually going to start this morning with a bit of a gag because I'd noticed that there was a live Twitter feed going on, and I was going to talk about the cultural divide between the UK and the US, because if you actually had a live Twitter feed behind a presentation in the UK, everybody British would just spend the entire meeting trying to get swear words up on screen and make each other laugh. What I was really reassured to learn this morning is that they've taken the live Twitter feed down because there actually is no cultural divide, and when they had it up, all the Americans were doing exactly the same. So I think it's a great example that we really do live in a global world. Now, what I want to talk about this morning, I think if everybody who is here kind of believes that we are living through an amazing revolution, and I think we're living through what I call the social revolution, which is every bit as significant as the industrial revolution. And I think in 100 years' time, when kids, if they still go to school, are at school, they will learn about the social revolution in the way we learned about the industrial revolution. And I think you've only got to look at, every week something happens that dramatically changes the world that's been driven by digital and social media, and be it the fact that that huge event of last week, the royal wedding, was actually, it was announced on Twitter that it was taking place, and it created absolutely record global traffic levels, and it even got through the Great Firewall of China to be the kind of top search in China. Be it the fact that the majority of us in this room and the majority of the world learnt about Osama bin Laden's death through Twitter. Or be it, some of the massive events that took place in the Middle East with the Arab Spring and the critical role that social media played in that. So I guess my point is if the social revolution is changing the world, then it's obviously having a pretty big impact on the world of marketing as well. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about this morning, is kind of what I see as 5 of the key shifts that are happening in the world of marketing because of the social and digital revolution. And the first one really is all about a shift from image being everything to reality being everything. I think our business, the advertising industry, used to be all about creating the best possible image around something, even if it was, and it usually was, completely disconnected from the reality. And I think that no longer is the case. And I'll share with you a few examples about the fact that we are living in a radical world of transparency today. This Dilbert cartoon, I think, sums it up quite nicely where we used to be. We replaced our styrofoam cups with paper cups, but it's not so clear that it helps the planet. Well, we didn't do it to help the planet. We did it to look like the sort of company that cares about that kind of thing. Oh, in that case, it's working great. And I think we saw huge examples of greenwashing and nice washing driven by this kind of stuff. And if you watch the wonderful Mad Men, which actually has made the advertising industry quite cool again, so we have to thank it for that. But there's some great examples from that one, the cigarette example, where they kind of come up with this great line to sell. I think it's Lucky Strike. It's they're toasted, which obviously is the first thing that comes into your mind usually when you think about cigarettes. But I think if they lived in a world where image was everything, we now live in a world where reality is everything. And in this world of radical transparency, you really can't hide. And I think we've had a couple of great examples of this. Is there anyone from Facebook here? Are they going to admit they're here? But I think this is just a terrific example of what of the fact that you no longer can hide anything, and that whatever you do, it will get out there very soon. And not only was it not necessarily a brilliant idea for Facebook to do this, but I'm not exactly sure they picked the best territory to attack Google on, because I don't think Facebook's whole data and privacy thing is necessarily as good as it should be. You may not have heard of this example, however, which has kind of set the UK press alight this week. There's a thing in the UK called super injunctions. And what super injunctions are basically is celebrities and sports stars who've been doing things they shouldn't can actually go to court, pay $100,000, and get a super injunction. And what it means is that not only can the press in the UK not write about it, they can't even write about the fact that they're not allowed to write about it. So it's created a complete world of secrecy. Except until somebody got hold of all the list of the super injunctions and started tweeting about them on Monday of this week, and it created the biggest ever day in the history of Twitter in the UK, as hundreds of thousands of people went to find out who'd been having sex with people they shouldn't have been whilst being married to other people and the whole thing. So the bottom line, and what is kind of slightly crazy, is you have a situation in the UK today where the press are not allowed to write about something that is absolutely open to the entire world through social media. But I think, two powerful examples that you can't hide anymore. Whatever you are doing, it is going to be out there pretty soon. And I think somebody who's actually used this from a positive perspective is Domino's. Everyone will know about the Domino's case, the two people who did some things with food that we wouldn't like them to do and then posted it on YouTube and created a massive issue for Domino's. I think they reacted very well, learned from this, and put together a campaign which for me is a very interesting example of the new world of marketing. So historically, if you had research that said people think your products are not very good, you would hide that research. What they actually did, as a quick clip from the video will show you, is use that, shared it with everybody, and used it as the platform to turn the business around. So if we have a look at that video.
There comes a time when you know you've got to make a change. You can't lead a company like this unless you love food. I love food. I love pizza.
It's bread, sauce, cheese, fresh ingredients. Doesn't feel like there's much love in Domino's pizza.
Domino's pizza crust to me is like cardboard.
Is it hard to watch this stuff?
Yeah, it's hard to watch. Worst excuse for pizza I've ever had.
You can either use negative comments to get you down, or you can use them to excite you and energize your process of making a better pizza.
So I think that gives you a kind of feel for what they actually did. The follow-up stage was basically taking on that holy grail of food, which is actually to show the product like it really is, rather than after 17 hours of surgery and the photo shoot to make it look fantastic. So they actually started, just shooting the product as it was. And I think you could say, is this kind of a bit of a stupid idea, or is it a great idea? I mean, I think the interesting thing is it's been a massive success. 14% increase on year-on-year sales, like for like, named as the runner-up in Marketeer of the Year. And I think a really interesting example of how to operate in the new world of transparency. The second point I wanted to share with you is the shift from control to collaboration. And I think when I was growing up as a kind of an account person, or doing strategy, we were absolutely obsessive about the need to control brands, and everything needed to be done. We couldn't let people get involved or do anything that deviated in any way, shape, or form from the brand essence and the brand book and all of this. I'd argue today that actually the most important thing, and the marketeers who will do the best, are those who give up control. And that it's much more important to actually create content that people want to pass around and share than it is to create content that you actually own and control. And almost if the old world of marketing was quite linear, where you had a brand and a consumer and a linear relation between the two, I'd argue that the new world of marketing is actually a square. And on this square, you have the brand. You have then, in the bottom left-hand corner, the prosumer. So basically, the proactive, engaged, more influential consumer who, if they believe in your brand or business, will become a very powerful advocate for you and actually influence other consumers. And similarly, employees, if they really believe in your company and your brand and your business, they can become incredibly powerful advocates for you through the use of social media. Now, obviously, none of this is actually new. You know, if 30 years ago somebody liked a product or had a good experience, they would tell other people. The thing that's dramatically new is that the scale and velocity of this has just changed unbelievably. So that today, if somebody has a good or bad experience, depending upon who they are, they can tell tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. And I thought I'd share with you an example, a brilliant example, which I use the word brilliant because we did it, a brilliant example of something we did for Evian, which is the Evian roller babies.
Let's observe the effect of Evian on your body.
Come on, I said a hip hop, you hit it to the hip hip hop, and you don't stop the rock it to the bang bang boogie. Say up jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie to beat.
Now what you hear is not a test. I'm rocking to the beat, and me, the groove, and my friends are gonna try to move your feet. See, I am Wonder Mike, and I'd like to say hello. Bang bang boogie to the boogie, the up jump the boogie to the bang bang boogie. Let's rock. You don't stop. Rock the rhythm that'll make your body rock. Real soul for you. My voice was then I brought two friends above. And next on the mic is my man Hank. Come on, come and sing that song, that song.
Now, what's interesting about that is it's the most downloaded piece of commercial content in history. It's now been downloaded. It's actually in the Guinness Book of Records at 45 million. It's now gone on to be downloaded 180 million times. Not only did it kind of ignite the world and become the most downloaded piece of commercial content, but it actually worked and sold more products. It won the Grand Effie in France. But I think probably the most interesting thing about it was named by Time magazine as their TV ad of the year, despite the fact that at the time it was named, it had never been on TV. And because of the success of it through social media, mid last year, the client actually found the budget to put it on TV because it had been such a massive success through social media. And I think it's a great example of the ability to harness hundreds of millions of people behind your brand. A terrific example, if sort of Evian is the hundreds of millions, I think BP is a great example of what one prosumer can do to take your business or company down. And everyone will be familiar with Leroy Stick. I just love some of the stuff that he wrote, so I'm going to share a couple. But you know, he was tweeting from @BP Global PR with stuff like, "Words can't express how sorry we are, so we're going to stop apologizing and just give our investors $10 billion. Safety is our primary concern. Actually, no, it's not. Profits, then safety. Oh, no, profits, image, then safety. But hey, it's still right up there." And I mean, he was brutally funny. But the interesting point behind this is that the official BP Twitter handle had 18,000 followers, and Leroy Stick had 190,000. So whoever was searching anything to do with BP around the time of the crisis was actually getting Leroy Stick assassinating BP. And they probably deserved it. In fact, my view is they did. But I'm not necessarily sure that they would appreciate the efforts that Mr. Leroy Stick was having in taking them down. Sometimes, though, companies don't actually deserve it. And I think this is a really interesting case from Pampers, where they've introduced a new product, nappies or diapers, as we call them in this country. A whole movement grew up on Facebook to basically say that the new Pampers Dry Max had these chemicals that leaked onto the skin of kids. They ended up with 2 court proceedings going on against them, both in Canada and North America, the US. And all of it, I mean, completely made up. None of this was true. They were totally vindicated. It was proven that there was no issue whatsoever with the product, but not before several thousand people had joined the Facebook movement and several hundreds of thousands of people had been involved in the debate. And I think it sort of shows that the consumer isn't always right and the consumer isn't always fair. So BP may have deserved it, but this is a case where Pampers probably didn't. Those are kind of some of the downsides of the collaboration. I think there's some brilliant things in the upsides of it, and I just wanted to share a couple of examples with you. This is fantastic. I only discovered this a couple of weeks ago, but it's Sneakerpedia, and basically something Foot Locker have done to use the power of collaboration, and I'll share a little video with you now.
greatest sneaker archiving project ever is about to begin. Finally, a place to show off our treasured sneakers. Share the trials, tribulations, the pain and passion of being a sneakerhead. Set the record straight. Let your friends know exactly how many pairs you own and what makes your collection utterly unique. It's for anyone obsessed with sneakers. It's a community space, not a marketplace. It's run by sneakerheads, for sneakerheads, powered by Foot Locker. Introducing Sneakerpedia, sneaker history in the making. Search for sneakers by the weight or tag. This goes way beyond the basics. Search by the type of stitching, the materials, the linings, or simply by association. You want to know what kind of Nike celebrities are wearing? Or maybe find the original colorways of the Gazelles. There's no limits. It's down to you. The more you add, the better it gets. Adding a Sneakerpedia is easy. 5 simple steps and you're done. 1. Grab a sneaker in the shoebox. 2. Now this bit's important. Stand the box on its side, place the left foot half in, half out. 3. Snap it. 4. Upload it. 5. Name it, tag it, and share a bit of its history. You're done. Want to be a co-founder of the greatest sneaker collection the world has ever seen? We need your help to get this started. We're looking for the most dedicated sneakerheads to build the Beta Club. This is an exclusive group of obsessives like yourself who will be the pioneers of Sneakerpedia. Just let us know if you want in. Why? Because when it comes to sneakers, we can't help ourselves. We're enthusiastic beyond reason.
But I think it's a really good example of adding value and really positioning them as a brand that is passionate and obsessive about sneakers and a very clever use of collaboration. Another brand who I think has done a brilliant job over the years is Uniqlo. Uniqlo in the UK, when they were going to redesign their website, they reached out on the internet and said, hey, we want your thoughts and views on how we can design a better website. They showed people they were listening, because when they actually did design the website, they've overtly communicated the fact that, we asked, you replied, we listened, and here's what we've done. Very simple but great idea from the end of last year was the Twitter and social media promotion, where the more people tweeted about a product, the lower the price went. Incredibly simple mechanic, but just really clever and really smart to push traffic of people talking about their products. And then the latest example is Unique Look, which I'll share a little video to explain it, but it's just a really good way of bringing people together. They go and buy their new Uniqlo stuff, they take a shot of themselves, they upload it, and you create this huge collaborative fashion experience. And then a final example of collaboration is from David Cameron, who's the UK Prime Minister. The UK had the biggest debt at one point in time in the G20, and so he got together with Mark Zuckerberg, did a webcast where he basically reached out to the country and said, help us, give us some thoughts and ideas to actually get the debt down in the UK. Now, my view is that if prime ministers of countries are now reaching out to get help with stuff like this, then I think most marketeers and agency people should definitely be changing the way they view collaboration. And I'll just show you a quick 30-second clip of Cameron.
I mean, basically, we've got a big problem here. We need to save a huge amount of money. We've got the biggest budget deficit anywhere in the G20. This year we're borrowing more than almost any other European country. And the idea of using a social networking site to help harness people's idea about how we save money, how we get value for money, and how we meet this huge challenge, I think is a great one. So thank you for engaging.
There we go. And it also allows me to use my mum's favourite photograph, which is David Cameron in the agency thanking us for the role that we played in helping him get in. But I do think, and apparently actually after this had happened, the White House were a bit furious that Obama hadn't done a Facebook thing, so he rectified that a couple of months ago, as we all know. The third key point, I think, you can no longer buy attention. You have to earn it. And I think there's a big shift from the old world where we were looking to buy media and buy attention to the new world where we need to earn media and earn attention. Interesting example is The Most Interesting Man, and this is a campaign we did for Dos Equis, which again, Time picked as one of their TV campaigns of the year. And for those of you who aren't familiar with The Most Interesting Man, it's a really simple idea. The beer-drinking young male does not want to be seen to be boring. That's his worst fear, is that on a Friday night, everyone thinks he's boring. So we just thought, well, we'll create the most interesting man in the world, but rather than having him be a kind of cool 25-year-old who gets all the girls, we'll actually make him this sort of 64-year-old cross between Ernest Hemingway and James Bond. And here he is.
People hang on his every word, even the prepositions. He could disarm you with his looks, or his hands, either way. He can speak French in Russian. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis. Stay thirsty, my friends.
Now, what's one of the great things about The Most Interesting Man is, Dos Equis is a relatively small on a global stage beer brand. It is the #1 beer page on Facebook. It's actually the #1 alcohol page on Facebook in any category in the world. It now has over a million fans. And what they're doing is they're actually writing new lines for us and creating content for us. So just a 3 selection that I've pulled out. His debut album was entitled Greatest Hits. He inhales CO2 and exhales O2. When he sucks helium out of a balloon, he sounds like James Earl Jones. But we've got about 20 years of content there, and there's some very, very entertaining stuff. And that just proves what I said, that it was the first beer brand to go over 1 million on Facebook. But also, I think sometimes you can kind of earn attention just by looking at things and doing things in a very different way that no one's considered before. And this is a really little idea, but I think it's an incredibly impactful one that was done by one of my agencies in France. And it's all around a new kind of cop TV show. The fourth change I want to talk about is I think we spent years and years obsessing about the who in marketing and identifying who our audience was. I think we're moving into a very interesting era where the where is going to be critically important. A good mate of mine works at Google, and I always said to him, I would have been very worried about your business model, because if you looked at how they made all their money in search, everybody clicked on the left-hand side and they made all their money on the right-hand side, which wasn't really a sustainable proposition. But I think because of the location-based revolution that we're going to live through, I think Google has a very secure future ahead of it. 85% of searches are based around location. And I think we're only just starting to scratch the surface of the kind of things that we'll be able to do when you take sort of location, mobile, and social. The Gap thing, I think everyone's seen and heard about, but just a really simple idea. First 10,000 people who check in to a Gap store on Facebook Places actually win a free pair of jeans. It was a massive success, and I think one of the very early examples of the kind of stuff that we'll be doing more and more. I'm going to share with you a case from KLM in Amsterdam. KLM is the big Dutch airline. I don't think it's necessarily a brilliant case, but I think, again, it's an example of people starting to experiment and do things. And I'll show you what they did in Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam.
Armed with our social media toolkit, our little experiment began. First job, find KLM passengers who had checked into their flight via one of KLM's Foursquare locations or left a message through Twitter. Second job, search their social profiles, get to know them in a discreet manner, to think of a personalized gift.
Ja, dat is een goeie.
Third job, hunt them down and deliver the gift.
Omdat zij een heel sportief iemand is en een weekend Rome gaat doen, dan is het misschien leuk als we haar zo'n Nike Plus bandje geven. Ja, wel heel leuk. Dan heb je dat niet nodig. Linda Bomhoff. Goedemiddag. Je liet ons weten via Twitter dat je met ons reist vandaag. Ja. Dus we hebben een kleinigheidje voor je gekocht. Ja, wat leuk. Om je een hele fijn weekend is het, geloof ik, hè? Maar Twitter al die goed voor is. Via Twitter heeft u een berichtje gestuurd dat u op Schiphol was en dat u met ons naar Mexico vloog. Vonden we in dat verband zo leuk dat we u een kleine verrassing willen aanbieden. Voor wat energie en wat verzorging. Een hele fijne reis.
Ja, bedankt.
Het is een bioscoopbon voor de social network. Dus we hebben een tegoedbon voor je van €15 om apps te downloaden. Niet schrikken hoor.
Super, dankjewel.
Ik zal daar meteen even twitteren.
After several weeks of handing out little gifts, it seemed that indeed an airline could use social media to both surprise and make a small difference to a passenger's day. And we're not just guessing that. We know.
I think it's not necessarily a brilliant example of logistics, because having people sprinting around airports is a pretty analog way of fulfilling what they did. But I think just a very smart example of how you can use location and what you can find out about people on social networks to actually enhance customer experiences. This is a great example from Germany, Granata Pet Food, where if you check in on Foursquare next to this billboard, it will dispense dog food for your dog. Which I'd love to see what it actually looks like after a full day, because I'm sure the kind of street is just covered in dog food. And then I'll talk in a second about One Young World, but this is a guy by the name of Parker Liato, who set out at the age of 15 to be the youngest ever person to ski to the geographic North Pole. And he didn't quite make it last year. But he was still the first. He actually made it there, but there was a part they had to go by boat because the snow had melted. But this was the first ever check-in on Foursquare at the geographic North Pole. But the great news is Parker waited till he was the ripe old age of 16, and he was our One Young World ambassador, who actually became the youngest person in history to ski to the geographic North Pole at the age of 16, which was pretty impressive. And my final point is all about the critical importance of moving from just profit to purpose. 86% of people in a big global study we did said that business needs to stand for more than just profit. And I think increasingly today, all consumers, and particularly the millennials, are looking for what is the bigger picture purpose behind the brand or company or business. Paul Polman, who's been an amazing pioneer at Unilever, who has actually said we're going to double our revenue, but we're going to reduce and halve our carbon footprint, which is a pretty powerful thing to say when you're one of the biggest companies in the world, sums it up nicely. He says, those companies that wait to be forced into action, or who see it solely in terms of reputation management or CSR, will do too little too late and may not even survive. I mean, I think it's interesting talking about the royal wedding. One of the key, if anybody who wanted to give presents, there was a big thing on the website saying, actually, don't give presents. We want you to give money to charity and donate to the Prince William and Miss Catherine Middleton Charitable Gift Fund. But I think one of the key points I really wanted to leave you with today is that we talk a lot about social media and we talk a lot about social responsibility. And we tend to talk about them as two completely separate things. My belief is that they're not. They're absolutely interlinked. And that the most successful businesses and leaders in the future will be those who are the most socially responsible. Because they'll get massive positive advocacy through social media from customers, clients, employees, and the world in general. And that conversely, if you aren't socially responsible, you will get taken down by social media. And I think we've seen a couple of interesting examples of this. You know, BP and Leroy Stick is one. I loved this example of Facebook being turned back on Facebook, where Greenpeace basically created a movement to say that Facebook should be using clean and renewable energy, and they ended up with 300,000 members pushing for Facebook to say that they would commit to using clean energy. You know, the Arab Spring is another amazing example, the role of social media, not just within countries. For example, in Egypt, it was Wael Ghonim, who was the Google employee using Facebook, who played an unbelievable role in the revolution in Egypt, but also the critical role it played in actually moving across the countries, because people across the whole of the Middle East saw that actually something's going on over here in Egypt, so why don't we do the same thing in our country? And I've just written a book and trademarked the wonderful term social business idea, which is to sum this up. But you know, the fundamental point is that I think businesses today need to sit down and find their social business idea. You know, what is it that is, and it's not about saying that making profit is a bad thing and that business should stop doing that. Business has to do that. I think unless we can actually prove that doing good leads you to do better, then people won't do it. But I think fundamentally, and I believe we can head into a world where actually the people who do the most good are actually the people who make the most money, and that would be a pretty good place to be. And the social business idea is the encapsulation of that concept. Now, it sits at the intersection of social media and social responsibility. Interestingly, there are lots of people who've done social business ideas who didn't have any idea that that's what they were doing. So Pepsi, when they did Refresh, were obviously doing the social business idea. And I think in a very interesting example of something they've done and something they've continued to back and support and push. One of our global clients, Dulux, we did I think it's a very interesting piece of work, the Let's Color campaign. Dulux is a big paint company, AkzoNobel, but obviously, you know, they wanted a bigger vision behind just bringing color into people's homes, and it was all about how do we bring color and brighten up some of the kind of tough and depressing areas of the world. And so we created this whole idea called Let's Color, and what you'll see is a video of actual events that happen. I mean, I think this is an interesting example of a few of the trends we've talked about today, but here are the 4 events that actually took place in London, Rio, Paris, and Jodhpur in India. And not only did it live in the real world, but it became a huge presence in the social media world, and it was actually named by TED as one of their 10 ideas and ads worth spreading this year. Nike also have done a great thing called Better World, which is all about using sport to make the world a better place, and I'd encourage you to check that out. And I just wanted to finish on an example that we actually, if I can go to it, doesn't want to let me. Finish on an example, something we actually did called One Young World. Now, you know, what we kind of thought is, as we're saying to our clients, business needs to become more socially responsible. That's what consumers are looking for. They would obviously turn around and go, that's great, David and Havas, but what are you guys doing? So what we actually did is set to create our own not-for-profit called One Young World. The idea was very simply, how do we leverage and harness the power of youth to affect positive change? So let's bring together the young people in the world and give them a platform to affect positive change. The inaugural One Young World happened in February 2010 last year. We brought together nearly 1,000 people from 114 countries. We did a 30,000-person global study to look at what the issues were that they viewed needed sorting in the world, everything from climate to global health to business. And then we had debates and passed resolutions around there. The councillors, as you'll see from the little video, were people like Kofi Annan, Desmond Tutu, Mohammed Yunus, Bob Geldof, and a whole host of other brilliant individuals who gave up their time for free as part of this. And I'll share with you a little video that sums up One Young World.
I'm here to find out why we're not being successful at making peace with other religions.
I want to create peace in my country because I live in conflict.
To make the youth the real future of my country.
And we're absolutely delighted to welcome you to this inaugural One Young World.
Welcome to London.
You dream dreams and you say, let us make poverty history.
All progress throughout the world is made by unreasonable people. I'm going to ask you over the next 2 or 3 days to be completely unreasonable people.
Only if we act, we can create the world that we want.
There are certain things about global business that are seen to be good and certain things about global business that are seen to be very bad. And I think, one of the things that you guys can help play a key role in is how we make global business more socially responsible.
I would call upon corporations to rethink about their roles in society.
The importance of doing good in business will be just as important as doing well in business.
So that's fantastic. We have our first ever One Young World resolution passed.
It's absolutely vital that we all, every single one of us, take a personal, concrete action away with us.
I'm sorry about my bad hair day.
That's why I was given to introduce you.
There is no religion out there that encourages its followers to attack or murder those of other religions.
As a Muslim at the moment, I feel like we're constantly being called upon to justify what other people are doing.
Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. A person is a person by other people.
Why can we not make it a priority to provide antiretroviral medications to every single person in Africa that suffers from HIV/AIDS?
If we that suffer the most from this conflict can sit together and talk, so why everyone else cannot do it?
Together, this forum can change the world.
Whenever you feel a strong sense of right and wrong, talk out of turn, and the world will thank you.
I've been very much inspired by you guys.
Hey!
You are the leaders of tomorrow, and you can be the change you want to see.
I'm embarking on an expedition in late March to attempt to become the youngest person to ski to the geographic North Pole.
And you must also remember that leaders, good leaders, are also good followers. If they don't lead, you should make them follow.
We really, 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 really want you to influence the world's leaders and to effect positive change.
That's why we're here. Go home and make it happen.
Let me thank David and Kate and Euro RSCG for the work they've done.
Hundreds of young people from all over the world are meeting in London today for the first ever summit of a youth movement called One Young World.
The world's press played their part in making the voices of the new generation heard around the world. One Young World is a global movement that doesn't end here. Because of it, our future leaders have found their voice, and the conversation continues.
It is up to us to give a voice to those who couldn't speak for themselves.
So just a quick close to say One Young World happens in September. There's some amazing things that came out of year one. Parker getting to the North Pole. They created a whole school bag project for Haiti to get school bags into the hands of kids in the refugee camps. They created the Missing Millennium Development Goal that Ban Ki-moon had them present at the MDG meeting, all about interfaith dialogue. I could kind of rattle on. But they're doing some amazing things, and anybody who is interested in getting involved in any way, shape, or form, please contact me, david.jones@havas.com or david.jones@oneyoungworld.com, and you can find the One Young World's website out there as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. That was fantastic. At this point, we'd love to take a few questions from the audience. So if you just come up to the microphones and ask away.
Easy ones.
I'll kick it off with one. Do we have one in the back?
That last video, I think about, I think it was actually Bush daughters. It says, don't just do well in business, but do good in business. For those of us that may not have the influence in the organization we work within, but subscribe to that, how would you recommend that we create that kind of a movement within an organization that is focused on profits and profit?
I think it's a really good question. In fact, a good friend of mine, I've watched over the last 4 years him go from being viewed as this complete extremist nutter to now one of the most important people in the company, because the company's kind of caught up with the need to do it. I mean, I think, you know, the key thing is there are so many examples now of big business, you know, from the Unilevers to the Walmarts, and even some of the medium-sized businesses like the Timberlands and the Patagonias and the Whole Foods, who are having real success through this. And I think the most important thing for me would be to not position yourself as, I believe we need to do good, and let's forget doing, you know, let's forget this sort of profit thing, which is evil. I think what you need to do is demonstrate that actually this is the best way of making us a more successful business in the future, is to actually set out to do good. Because if we don't, you know, and BP's one extreme example, but it is going to happen to every business in every sector over the coming years. I mean, the amazing thing about this millennial generation is they really believe that they should vote with their wallets and punish the companies that don't live up to their values. So I think the first thing would be to be really clear that you're not saying, you know, this is some kind of alternative thing. No, this is actually the best way of making the company succeed. Secondly, is to find the like-minded people within your organization, and there'll be a ton of them. And thirdly is just to gather the proof and cases that, yes, it actually works, you know. And here's an example of company A that actually did much better because they set out to do good rather than just, you know, setting out to sort of do what got us into the mess that we all saw in the global financial and economic meltdown, where, you know, we saw where the pursuit of profit for profit's sake leads you. And if you can't change them, then change company. You know, that's the other thing.
Another question in the middle there.
On one hand, it's clear that we need to educate companies as to why, you know, engaging purpose is in their best for-profit interests. By the same token, do you feel we also need to educate consumers or customers that they need to be more mindful and a little bit more organized and more strategic in how they engage with social media so that they can leverage their buying power, not just their good intentions to coerce brands to be more responsive?
I mean, I think it depends on which consumers you're talking about, because I think if you actually look at the millennials and the under 25s, they're kind of already doing it. It's what they believe in. And not only that, but it's how they're actually living their lives. I mean, I was chatting with one of the professors from Harvard recently. He's basically saying that all of the star talent that they're seeing in Harvard and the other business schools actually wants to go and join Teach for America and go and do things like this, rather than actually go into Wall Street and make a fortune. So I think, you know, we're at the start of a movement, and the movement is going to play out. And, you know, with each decade that goes by, it's going to become even more, you know, dramatic. So I don't think we need to educate consumers. I think they're kind of there already. And what you'll see is, you know, we will see more and more examples of the BPs of the world. There's another industry and sector that people will decide to target and take down. So I think, you know, the biggest challenge and the biggest issue I see in it all is the financial markets and shareholders, because fundamentally, social responsibility is inherently, and sustainability is inherently a medium to long-term proposition. And for the financial markets, kind of long-term is this quarter, you know, short-term is today. And I think unless we can actually show that doing good leads to you doing better, they will never come on board and the whole thing will fall apart. And I think that's going to be the most critical thing rather than actually educating the consumers, because I think they're there already.
We have time for one more.
The I work for is actually doing great things since it's business. And so we've been for 50 years. We know it's an amazing thing for the environment, for the community. How do you educate people about kind of gloating about what you're doing, and how do you get other people to tell your story?
I mean, it is the biggest issue, because I think there's quite a bit of cynicism around business. So and depends on the country you are in the world, but there are many countries that go, yeah, they really care and they really want to do good. All they want to do is make more money. And I think if you get caught looking like that's what you're about, that you're actually using it as a marketing tactic or as a sort of CSR program, I think you'll end up in trouble. So I think the first thing is it needs to be at the core of business strategy rather than living in a silo. I think the second thing is to tell people to talk about what you're doing rather than that you're doing it. Because I think the people who talk about the fact that you're doing it, it kind of looks like, hey, look at us, we're great, rather than what you're doing. But I think the most important thing is just be authentic, be transparent, be humble as well. I think the more it's sort of understated rather than huge rah-rah. But it is a really big challenge and one that a lot of people get wrong.
Great. David Jones, thank you so much.
Thank you.